Welcome back. In the last module, Danielle and Michael set expectations for the new fiscal year and had some initial discussion about professional development in the areas of project management and delegating. Since then, they have had frequent conversations about the progress Michael has made on each business expectation, including the file project. In this module, check-in number 2, you'll see Danielle and Michael returning to the development aspect of his first check-in. Development is part of the mass perform process, and while optional, provides every manager with an opportunity to build skills used either in the current job and or those essential to a next step opportunity. Let's see how Danielle manages Michael's expectations for development.
Hi, Michael. Here we are, continuing our mass perform check-ins from home. How are you?
I'm doing well and excited to have this check-in. We talk a lot about business, so I'm excited to talk a little about me. So excited, I dressed up for the occasion.
Ah, interesting. How often do you have a conversation about you? About where you are professionally and where you want to go? A development conversation requires both managers to pause their focus on the business talk, to talk about the person and the skills the employee uses to deliver business results.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So far, our mass perform check-ins have focused on setting expectations and giving one another feedback, even as we're both working from home. The feedback has been tremendous, particularly your feedback to me on how I can best support your work.
And your feedback has helped my skills improve.
Your research skills are top-notch. Your ability to complete the file project has kept us focused and generated great results. But this is your development check-in, so let's dive in. As you said, it's time to talk about you. So when you think about next steps in development, what skills come to mind?
Good job, Danielle. It's easy to get drawn back into talking about the business. However, when discussing development, be sure to stay focused on the person and his or her development. Also, notice how she asked Michael for his ideas. She knows he'll be more invested in learning and growing when it's his idea rather than hers. Danielle also knows that she'll be able to layer in her perspective as the discussion evolves.
Well, I completed my development plan, but I don't really know where to start this conversation.
Well, let's start with your plan. What ideas do you have? Oh, my cat has decided to join us as well today.
Well, I listed both short and long-term goals. What we discussed at my first check-in were more short-term goals for skill development. However, when I think long-term, and this might be a hard thing to say, but I'd like to do your job someday.
I think having my job is a great goal to work on. So what kind of experience or coaching can I do to help you get my job one day?
At this point, Michael has identified his first development goal. How easy would it be for Danielle to become the sage on the stage and offer advice? Instead, Danielle is holding back her perspective to ask Michael how she can help. And starting her question with what allows Michael to respond in depth.
I'd like to have more exposure to the presentation side of the work we do. I do a lot of the groundwork, like with the file project, but then you talk about it directly with the senior team. I'd like to go talk about it with the commissioner and his team directly.
You're right. Presenting is a really important part of my job. I know we've talked in the past about how your presentations have not always hit the mark.
Can you give me an example?
I can. You presented a couple weeks ago, and we talked afterward about the need to evaluate your audience. The current team includes a bunch of newer employees, so including a bit of the project's history would have given them more context. But I hear what you're saying, and I'm happy to give you opportunities to present to the commissioner and the senior staff. Actually, I'm presenting the data you put together next week. Would you like to co-present with me?
I'd love to co-present, but I'd also like a chance to present myself. Maybe we could do a dry run first, then I could incorporate your feedback before I present.
It's a great idea to practice ahead of time. I still have concerns about your readiness to present solo, so let's work towards that. For example, it helps me to outline my talking points for each slide. So why don't you take a stab at preparing the talking points, and we can practice ahead of time.
That makes sense. I'll work on it this week.
Perfecto, Danielle. Development conversations can be difficult conversations when the employee has a more optimistic perspective about his or her abilities than the more seasoned manager. In this case, the reality of the situation is that Michael is not yet ready. But if not, why not? Rather than just saying no, Danielle takes time to analyze what skills are needed, the specific skill gap, and how to develop that requisite skill. In addition, Danielle wisely uses the skill of reinforcement several times to bridge what Michael wants with what she thinks is viable. She says that's a great idea, despite her assessment of his aptitude. Rather than dismissing his interest, she reinforces it as a future possibility, saying, let's work toward that. She then plans the concrete steps, including immediate practice, that will lead Michael toward readiness. Perhaps of greatest importance is her honesty with Michael about not being ready to present solo. Remember, employees want your feedback as well as your support to grow and develop. Danielle has turned down Michael's request to present solo. She did it, however, skillfully, and so achieved Michael's buy-in to her next steps.
So, what other ideas are on your plan?
Well, in our first check-in, we talked about my need to develop additional project management skills.
I'm sorry, Michael. Can you repeat that? I couldn't hear what you said.
Sure. In our first check-in, we talked about my need to develop additional project management skills. I've done some research on my own, and I think I have a great opportunity. There's this week-long conference next year. I've looked at our calendars, and I think coverage will be fine. I'm really hoping that I can go, and you'd be willing to pay for it.
Uh-oh. Danielle was not expecting this. There's no way she can afford to send Michael to California.
You know what, Michael? I think it's really great that you did some research about conferences you could attend. Project management experience is important, particularly something that you will need if you want my job someday. Unfortunately, I'm not sure a week-long conference is in our budget right now. How about researching some more shorter conferences or maybe virtual conferences? We also talked about getting you more up to speed on our project management software. How has that been going?
Yeah, I feel like I'm finding my way through it. I've Googled some things, and I think it's better than it was.
Have you asked Bob to help you with it? We did discuss that at your first check-in.
Yeah, I think he's busy. It seems like he's got a lot going on. Like myself, he's a pretty busy guy.
How about this? I will directly tell Bob to carve out some time to work with you on this. One of his responsibilities is to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the software.
All right, I think that will help.
One of the reasons we don't talk about development more often are the limitations in resources that support professional growth. However, limitations are part of any manager's reality. Danielle needed to say no, but did so skillfully. She first uses the skill of reinforce or agree to reinforce Michael's use of his research skills. Why does this skill work so effectively? Because when someone agrees with you, you feel good, and as a result, you're more open to what they say next. After telling Michael that budget isn't available for travel, she asks Michael a series of questions. Questions that collaboratively brainstorm alternate possibilities while still supporting his objective. Reinforce, ask, reinforce or agree, and ask. She skillfully shifts his attention from what isn't available to what is.
Okay, great. What else is on your plan? Ooh, my cat decided to join us again.
Well, project plan involves a lot of staff doing parts of the project, so I've added strengthening my delegating skills.
Oh, Michael, I'm so glad. Delegating is the one issue I was hoping you would bring up. We talked about it at our first check-in, and while I've seen some improvement, I've also noticed that you're flying solo again. Some of that responsibility is mine, so I commit to giving you more direction and support.
Can you give me an example of when I'm flying solo? Danielle, can you excuse me for a minute? Quiet! I'm so sorry, Danielle.
Oh, no problem, Michael. Examples of flying solo. Well, I noticed you were calling the potential vendors with questions about the file project. I think that is something that your team could have done, right? It would have allowed them to develop their research skills and better own the project. So, what is the real challenge here for you?
Trusting that others will do the same job I would do. I call the vendor with an objective, and one question leads to the next, and you end up with more information than you started out to get. So, how do I trust that the staff will ask the same question and get all the information that I do?
Well, do you always get all the information you need with that first call?
Good point. I do occasionally have to call a vendor back.
And delegating the calls would have saved you what? A half a day of work that could have been spent on something else?
Like working on my project management skills.
Bingo.
So while I want things to be done right, I need to be building my staff skills as well, and that will help me.
You're moving in the right direction, Michael. If you want my job, you need to be able to delegate, and you need to be able to delegate effectively. It's one of the skills I use most often because it allows each employee to do more and frees up my time for more strategic work. I want to see you delegate more, so how can I help?
I'm not sure.
How about as a concrete step forward, there's a lot of really great online courses in our LMS. How about I attach some of them to our development plan? I'll do that after this meeting. But I also think it would be helpful if you were to make a list of everything you currently do, what you can delegate, and where you need to skill up your staff in each area. Effective delegating will require you to coach and to teach new skills to your staff.
LMS, is that where I go to take my mandatory trainings?
It is. It's called My Path,
There's more to this than I thought.
which is exactly why you slide back into flying solo. This is hard. It's more than just telling someone what to do. It's accessing skill levels, teaching a job skill, and coaching to keep their development going. Let's review your plan as part of our biweekly check-ins. What do you think?
Sounds good. I'll create an action plan for project management and presenting to management as well.
Michael, I'm impressed with the thought you put into your development plan. Your short-term goals will take how you execute your current role and responsibilities to the next level, and they are essential for your long-term goal of stepping up in responsibility. I'm here to help whenever you need, and we'll add development as part of our biweekly touch bases. Are you committed to your plan?
I'm in. Thanks for the support.
So, what began in the first check in as a discussion about business expectations and development became a much more focused conversation about development when time was dedicated to this topic alone. Michael now has a well thought out action plan of what he wants to pursue and a commitment of support from his manager. Just as importantly, the Commonwealth is on its way to a more highly skilled manager in its workforce. Did you notice how much of the time Danielle asked questions to guide the conversation instead of simply telling Michael what he should do? And how the GROW model isn't necessarily sequential, but moves back and forth between reality, options, and obstacles before arriving at a way forward. Finally, when discussing development with a manager, don't overlook the likelihood that skills are interrelated or work together with one. Analyze what effective skill use looks like, and be sure all aspects of skill development are included in your action plan. So what's next? You won't meet Michael again until the fourth check-in toward the end of the year. In the meantime, check out the modules on coaching or difficult conversations and continue to build skill for all of your mass-perform conversations.